Again for another quick hits conversation. Today I would like to talk about how do you interrupt or change the direction of a call or a conversation or a meeting that has gotten off course. And Karina, I'd like you to start us off. What do you think?
Well, see, I think because I look at what would stop me from interrupting, and I think what possibly would stand in the way of a lot of people from interrupting, because the awkward bit, what is it that makes it uncomfortable? And I think in large part it's belittling whatever it is, because assuming that they're not just talking about EastEnders or something, which for anyone in the States is a soap opera over here. Okay. Means nothing to them whatsoever. But you know, they're talking about a TV show or so, then that's a different thing. You just have to kind of go, okay, guys, we've wandered off, got things to do, let's refocus, and I think everyone will be fine with that. Mm-hmm. But if it's gone off on a subject that is relevant and clearly, because usually when conversations take off, people are into them, aren't they? They mean something to them, they're enthusiastic about it, and that's why it's just drifted off. So I think the risk element that makes us tiptoe around it is undermining whoever's speaking at the time and then belittling an issue that we can quite clearly see is important to them. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, the key focus would be on whatever technique you use. You'd have to try and make sure that you reassure those people that, that the issue is important. So for example, if there's someone taking the minutes, you can kind of go, okay, can we minute that? Because then we can make sure we come back to it later. It is important. Sorry to have interrupted you so-and-so, valid point, but we'll come back to it later because we've got to get through this. So I think it's allaying those potential landmines that can go off there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jim?
Yeah, that's interesting because sometimes going off topic is an indicator that you're off topic. And they have a different agenda that needs to be addressed as well. When I do meetings and I find myself, in particular with clients that tend to go off topic to begin with, like sometimes you have like repeat offenders, right? Yes. I will, it's true. So what I'll do is I'll set a time constraint around the meeting and I'll say, we can cover everything we need to do in half an hour and then we should be good to go. So, if you put some limits up front, you'll be a little bit more focused during your time together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I completely agree. That commitment that it has to finish at this point really helps people focus. I think, Karina, though, your point of there's times when I say I'm in a board meeting that the topic becomes more relevant because that is what everyone needs to discuss at that point. Mm-hmm. And you really have to judge it quite wisely of sometimes stopping it is because something else is much more important. But if that topic is the most important thing at that point, then you sometimes have to have the confidence to let it go, to let the conversation keep going. And that is an art of a good chairperson or facilitator or whichever role you're in. How do you
I have two thoughts. One, I want to comment because Katy, we were on a call with you earlier this week, and at one point you actually said, we've gotten off topic. Do we want to continue on this topic or do we want to go back to what the purpose of this call was? And we were all like, oh yeah, let's go back to the purpose of the call. And I thought that was a really good way of handling it. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, what if you're not the chair of the meeting? What if you're just an attendee and you feel like this isn't working? Because I had a client this week who was in that position and she had a point that really needed to be discussed in the meeting, and somebody else was off on a topic that was down the road for the project, and she interrupted and was like, guys, we really need to talk about this, and her boss fussed at her about it after the meeting. So how do you, if you're not the leader, say we're off topic?
So I have a nice little trick for this that's nonverbal. And that is simply to make eye contact with the leader or the facilitator, if it's small enough, and then just simply nod your head like, we got it, move on, here we go.
And Zoom, that's really hard.
Oh, you can't do that on Zoom. It's true.
Robyn and Karina know the example of when we go off topic. I have had people in Zoom calls do this.
It wasn't us. Just to be clear, it wasn't us.
No, it wasn't you. That body language that in a live meeting, I completely agree with you. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a great question when you don't have the power
Yeah, what is it? Can
wonder
you, if you're on a Zoom call, can you like text the leader and be like, hey, we've gotten off topic? Like, is that a thing?
I reckon it's to do with how you frame what you're saying. So if in the position of the leader, they have the authority and the power to be able to speak on behalf of the whole room and say, we need to do this. Whereas if you're not the leader, you don't really have that authority. So it tends to rub people up the wrong way. They kind of think, well, who are you to tell us what we need to talk about? So if you kind of framed it in an I sort of way, so saying, I get it, it's all really important, again, allay all those fears and kind of go, I'm not saying that this is, a load of crap. It's just that, I was really concerned about the issue. Are we going to have time? Are we going to make sure we've got time to do that? So if it's an I thing, no one can really argue with that because you're only speaking for yourself, if you see what I mean.
You also have to be careful because there are some people who don't breathe. When they get on their soapbox and they just go, they're a lot harder to interrupt than someone who is being thoughtful and methodical and thinking. Those people are easier for you to have a place.
True.
Like now. Yeah. And again, I think there's some examples of you can really upset people by, doing that verbal sign, a non-verbal sign, sorry. So it's how do you do it politely? And there's some cultural things there of what you're accepting in an organisation. Are you allowed to talk over each other and interrupt people?
You can use the chat box specifically on Zoom. You can do that with direct messaging specifically to the facilitator and be sure that it's only viewed by the person who's intended to view it. But the other point that Katy brought up, which I thought was very interesting, is that body language tends to be more exaggerated to be effective on Zoom. We'll all look like Muppets, we'll all be very excitable on camera. So
yeah.
I think for me, when I am the leader, because I do it on these calls where I'm like, okay, we're running out of time, we need to wrap it up, and summarizing somebody's point, I think really helps when you say, I hear you, this is what I understand you're saying, I know we need to have, like your point, Karina, we need to have a conversation about that right now, we need to have this conversation, so let's just park that and come back to it in a little bit. I think that's a really, really good point. But getting over that hump of stepping on someone, especially in a Zoom call where only one person can talk at a time.
Yeah. I wonder if in Britain we're any better at this, because we seem to be able to do, I'm generalizing hugely here, but we seem to be able to do the tiptoey, sorry, excuse me, can I just put my tea down? And then, we seem to be able to do that sugar-coated interruption thing, quite because we were always stepping on eggshells, let's be honest. So we seem to maybe culturally, it's or is it easier in cultures where people are sort of more abrupt generally, and they could just kind of go, guys, we're way off topic, stop, we need to, I guess in some cultures that's more accepted. So I don't know.
Yeah. What do you see in Germany, Katy?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I actually think that you see a mixture. You see in a really international, the Italians really do talk over each other. I have a Czech lady in the office with me and she will talk and keep talking. But the Germans do pause. There's more space to breathe, but they're equally more directive. And because English is often people's second language, it is less flowery. It's less, oh, excuse me, please can I? Oh, sorry. It has to be more, I only know how to say it this way. Stop. have to go back.
Yeah. It's a challenge. Go ahead, Katy. Sorry.
I think just on your point and Karina's point that bit of building the coalition. So when you say you can put those points together and go, I agree with this, we all agree that. So you build on people's points. I think that is a softer way of doing it rather than a no.
It's not never, just not now kind of thing. It's
right.
We're not filling the subject. It's, we're taking the subject and going, fabulous, thank you. And we'll put that over here and for later, so it's not knocking anyone flat.
So I think what we're saying is that there is an art to it. It is a learned behavior. You have to be conscious of people's feelings, because if they're talking about something, it matters to them, and then bring the group back in a way that works, rather than just going, this doesn't work for me, all of you shut up, this is what we're going to talk about now, because that is never going to go over very well. So I want to thank you for having this conversation with me about interrupting and redirecting conversations. It's been really fruitful, and we'll have another one again soon.
Awesome. Cheers, Robyn.